Let the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Yeah. Fool me, you can't get fooled again.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ben. Marcus and I recorded this episode earlier yesterday, so that was before the 59 Tomahawk missiles were sent from the Trump administration to Sherrat airfield in order to theoretically bomb the chemical weapons that were used in the atrocious attacks from Assad's regime on his own civilians. The death toll now is over 80 when it comes to those people who died in the chemical attacks. So I just want to give a quick, brief update before we start today's podcast about what we know. We know 59 Tomahawk missiles were fired from American destroyers in the eastern Mediterranean at El Sherrat airfield base in Syria. The Syrian army says that roughly 9 people were killed, including 4 innocent civilian children. This is what happens when we fire missiles in order to prevent other tragedies. More tragedies occur. Trump ordered the strike after 2 days of intense deliberations that involved 2 meetings of his top national security advisors, including one that Mr. Trump conducted from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, which is kind of a strange thing to think about him discussing life and death and war and peace right next to a golf course. Kind of a good visual of the difference in perspective there. In announcing the strikes on Thursday evening, Mr. Trump called the chemical attack very barbaric and said his decision would prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons. The Russian military, which is active in Syria, was notified of the strikes in advance, though American officials did not personally inform President Vladimir Putin. In a briefing, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson criticized Moscow for failing to live up to its promise in 2013 to destroy all of Syria's chemical weapons. Of course, that was the negotiations that the Russians, along with the Obama administration, took part in order to get the chemical weapons out of Syria. Now, do we know if they actually did get those weapons out of Syria in 2013? It is possible. As I was talking about on television recently, that border is extremely porous. Chemical weapons can flow through there extremely easily. And so we don't know when the new chemical weapons were actually able to come in to Syria. Now, this is the strange and interesting thing is we also know for a fact that planes have been taking off from Al Sherrat airfield base in Syria today. So I don't think it was a very effective military strike. And of course, the cynic in me sees this as nothing more than an opportunity for Donald Trump to raise his abysmal poll numbers, which are currently sitting at 35% in his first, under 80 days in office. It's quite unprecedented to have a president with such low approval ratings so early on in his administration. This also changes the news cycle for him. No longer are we talking about Russian collusion. No longer are we talking about the Affordable Care Act repeal and replace. No longer are we talking about a whole series of things regarding, climate change and all the negative press he's been getting regarding his lifestyle when it comes to golfing and things like that. This completely changes that narrative, and mark my words, there will be an increase in his poll numbers. These things are very strategic. And as I say later on in this episode, right on cue, I talk about how we show the missiles launching. We show the missiles flying through the air here on mainstream media, on all the networks. Fox News. People said I didn't criticize Fox News enough. Fox News is definitely to blame for this. CNN, MSNBC, all of them are to blame for this. We show the missiles flying through the air like beacons of freedom and beacons of hope, and we don't show what happens when they land. And I'll tell you one thing, we need to start showing more of what happens when these missiles land. This attack does not get Assad out of power. This attack does align in some strange ways, as Rand Paul discussed. Rand Paul being against the intervention in Syria because, of course, there was no national threat to the United States coming from Syria. This is simply an interventionist move. ISIS is probably pleased with this move in many, many ways. Foreign policy and politics lead to strange bedfellows, and that's why getting involved in the Middle East is such a quagmire and such a nightmare, because the factions are so specific and so abstract when it comes to why they're fighting. They're specific with religions and tribes, and then it gets very blurry from there. We pay off certain tribes, we pay off certain sects. Next thing you know, a higher bidder has come, and they've decided to take their money and change who they're fighting for, etc., etc., etc. We've talked to our good friend Saman Arbabi about this at length. My concern with the military strike, with the 59 Tomahawk missiles, what now? This is a huge deal. I mean, can you imagine if 59 missiles were launched and hit the United States of America? This is a provocation of war. I understand we've been in Syria for a very long time, but now where do we go from here? Does Donald Trump simply want to have, does he want to have a wartime presidency? Does he want to be a wartime president? Certainly those alt-rights individuals who are extremely nationalistic and extremely non-interventionalist, those individuals, the Steve Bannon minions, the Breitbart minions, are not happy with this whatsoever. The Richard Spencers of the world, not that it matters. Hardcore conservatives, hawkish conservatives are happy. The John McCain wing of the party, the Lindsey Grahams of the Republican Party. And then, of course, you have your statist Democrats, such as former Senator Barbara Boxer. Nancy Pelosi has come out in favor. Chuck Schumer basically came out in favor. There are powers that be in Washington that are very pro this. Obviously, we see the atrocities. We see the kids dying. We see the kids suffering like fish out of water. It's horrible. It's disgusting. But now the question is sending in more military bombs, sending in 59 Tomahawk missiles to explode and destroy and degrade their country, is that going to help them? Or are there other ways to get this done, such as UN intervention and a series of other policies that can be put in place to prevent the Assad regime from carrying out chemical weapons attacks in the future? Assad is in a very strange position, again, because a lot of the people, if he is gone, that want to fill the vacuum of power are worse than he is in many, many ways. So that's why the Middle East is so confusing and so complex. But we did not have that information before we started this episode. So please keep that in mind. I think it was a great episode. It's extremely fun. Also, briefly, the nuclear option, we talk about with Gorsuch towards the end. The Republicans want to put it in place, allowing Gorsuch to be confirmed with 51% of the vote. This is something the Democrats did in 2013. Basically, it was Harry Reid. They did not want filibusters to be allowed in the appointees of Barack Obama, except for in the case of the Supreme Court, which is interesting because now obviously the Republicans are taking that and making it effective in a decision regarding a Supreme Court nominee. They're using the nuclear option. They've expanded it, as these people always do. The precedent was set, however, in 2013 by Harry Reid and the Democrats. And so we get into that a little bit. And also there was a terror attack today in Sweden, in Stockholm, 4 people dead in a truck attack, which plays into what we talk about when it comes to the mad world that we're currently living in. And I understand many perspectives, different perspectives on what's happening now regarding Donald Trump, regarding his administration, with Mattis and McMaster's at the helm, deciding to use military action, deciding to send over missiles. So we will have a lot to talk about in the future. And the cynic in me says this is a rally around the flag moment. Trump's polls go up. Americans get war fatigue. Trump's polls go down. Repeat. That was a tweet that I put out there because I think that's accurate. And that seems to be the life cycle of most of the presidents that have existed in my lifetime. So yes, enjoy the episode. It's a strange time we're living in, but we're going to live through it, and hopefully we can learn from these decisions. And honestly, I hope this is not the beginning of a much larger foreign intervention situation in the Middle East. However, I don't see how it isn't. This is very, very real stuff for Assad and his regime. They're still in power. This does have conflicts. This does create conflicts with the U.S. and the Russian relations. It's a massive, massive thing that we will definitely be talking about on the next episode. Thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy the show. Hail yourselves. All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Ben Kissel. That's Marcus Parks.
Hey, Ben.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Oh, it's just, as a Democratic strategist, I've just been sleeping so well at night.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel really good.
Now that you're firmly on the side of the Democrats.
The demo, and I used to call them Democrats, but now I say they're Democrats. They're wonderful. No, I got a chance to do ITV 24, and I wasn't aware, but they brought me on as a Democratic strategist, which was extremely fun. I got to go against a Republican strategist regarding what happened in Syria, and Donald Trump blaming the Obama administration for the current chemical attack, which we'll get into later on in the show. Obviously, a very serious, sad subject. Over 50 people dead in a horrific gas attack and chemical attack in Syria. One of the worst possible demises a human being can have. And of course, much like a missile dropped from a drone or a weapon sporadically shot throughout an amusement park, children and women, along with men, pass away. It doesn't discriminate. There is nothing more equality based than a chemical weapons attack when it comes to the non-discriminate amount of death and chaos and sadness that they spread.
It's the most inexact form of warfare. It is truly disregard for human safety or life.
It's absolutely awful. And of course, it does look like the Assad administration are the ones who put that into place. It doesn't we don't know. It could have come from, members of ISIS or a militant group within Syria. But in my personal opinion, take it for what it's worth, I believe the Assad regime is responsible for the chemical attack that happened in Syria. But we're going to get more into that a little bit later on in the episode. But I was introduced as a Democratic strategist on television, which was, quite surprising. I want them to just introduce me as a political commentator, and I think we'll get that cleared away. Although it is fun. I mean, I can argue. I could be a Republican strategist or a Democratic strategist. I can see both sides, and I could argue both points vehemently because it's just kind of fun to get angry on TV. No, you, sir, are wrong.
Sir?
No, sir.
Sir?
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir?
I do bite my thumb at you, sir.
I bite my toe at you, then. That's political discourse on television news. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. I have to clarify from the dumpster fire chats. Yes, Hinckley, the man who shot Reagan, is out of jail.
Yes,
and I will say Reagan the way I say Reagan. He is out of not even jail. He's out of the mental facility, just living his life and doing things like that. And I think that was the only thing that I misspoke about. And of course, South Dakota. We all know that is where the Dakota pipeline is. All right, so let's start here with Devin Nunes. He has stepped down. And he will be replaced by a series of maniacs. Trey Gowdy is in the running.
Mike Conaway.
I
mean, not in the running. They're there to temporarily lead the committee's Russia probe.
Okay, and of course that is what Devin Nunes was doing. He was up there leading the probe with the Russians' involvement in the 2016 election regarding Donald Trump, and we'll get into Susan Rice here as well. The major issue with Devin Nunes was before he went to speak to the committee, he went to the White House first, received their talking points, went back to the committee, and in the minds of many people, including ourselves, I believe I can speak for you on this, Marcus, that doesn't seem to be a very bipartisan approach to a massive probe that has international ramifications. So I think it was right for Devin Nunes to step down the exact same way that Jeff Sessions recused himself from the Russian probe as well.
Although Devin Nunes is not going with any dignity whatsoever.
Oh, good. That's always the best way to do it in Washington, isn't it?
Kicking and screaming.
Nice.
This is his statement. He said, several left-wing activist groups have filed accusations against me with the Office of Congressional Ethics. The charges are entirely false and politically motivated and are being leveled just as the American people are beginning to learn the truth about the improper unmasking of the identities of U.S. citizens and other abuses of power.
And of course, the unmasking that he's referring to is what we're finding out about Susan Rice, of course, National Security Advisor for Barack Obama, that she was, she looked into, she wanted to get information on private U.S. citizens regarding their ties with the Trump campaign and the Trump campaign ties with the Russians. She wanted to get names at the end of the day.
She sought to learn the identities of Trump associates swept up in surveillance of foreign officials by United States spy agencies. I mean, Rice is dirty.
Rice, and of course, Susan Rice, she was the mouthpiece for the Obama administration. Not an easy job to be a mouthpiece for any of these administrations because all administrations have blood on their hands, and all administrations, in order for them to survive, have to use an immense amount of spin, aka lies. One of the most famous lies on Susan Rice's plate is the lies regarding Benghazi. Of course, the U.S. embassy in Libya that was only there because of our atrocious overthrowing of Gaddafi Gaddafi, in my personal opinion. All it did was lead to a quagmire, a disaster, and a place where militant minds are allowed to thrive. Benghazi, 4 individuals died. They blamed it on, Susan Rice blamed it on, because the Obama administration told her to, on a video, The Innocence of Muslims, a YouTube video, which was really just as, that was just one of the, just as bad as what the WWE did with Chris Benoit, and saying he couldn't have done it because if he does have the mind of an 85-year-old, there's no way he could pull off those moves. It was just such a self-protective move, and obviously a flawed response to a huge tragedy that, lost countless lives, not just the 4 Americans.
Yeah. And, the Trump said yesterday that she may have committed a crime, but there's no evidence here. And yes, she did seek to learn the identities of the Trump associates, but what the right wing is talking about here is that she is guilty of unmasking certain officials. And they are talking about her unmasking as if it is fact right now. It is not fact right now. But I think that it is important here on both sides for us to not jump to conclusions, just as we're kind of doing here on the Russia thing, where there's a lot of smoke. We're not jumping to any conclusions just yet. I think it is interesting, but it is not a fact.
Well, we don't know that for a fact, absolutely, but it would be in her best interest, and it would be something that she would have power to do. And of course, the names, Michael Flynn's name, and a whole series of others, Manafort, and even Roger Stone to some degree. There's evidence that they were being spied upon, and we will uncover more and more of that, which is why Roger Stone is so desperate to testify in front of Congress. I mean, he is treating this like a WWE promo. Every time he gets a turn to speak, he is just demanding that they have him come to Congress. I've never seen somebody more, maybe Roger Clemente or something like that, the baseball player who borderline perjured himself, I believe. Was it him or the other one? Or one of the McGuire or Clemente both did something very stupid in front of Congress. So it is interesting, though, because we do know for a fact there were leaks. Every administration has leaks, and it's sort of, they call it like backdoor or background, channeling. It's sort of this accepted truth that leaks will exist, but technically on paper they're not supposed to. But everyone knows that things get leaked, and it's sort of this bizarre gray area. For example, the man who leaked Deep Throat, it took 30 years before they unmasked him, and still people believe that he should have served time in jail. And then, of course, journalists who are under an immense amount of stress, other than Fox News, who seem to be thriving under this presidency regarding access. He certainly loves to watch the programming, Donald Trump, that is. But the journalists themselves do feel as if there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress when it comes to criminalizing the leakers. And so there is a sort of chilling effect that the Obama administration has had on the journalism community. So, with all the Russian stuff, I was thinking about this. Yes, again, we don't have the fire right now, but what usually kills people in a house fire is the smoke. And so if we do have 4 consistent years of this small drip of information coming down from the Russian probe, very similar to Hillary's email scandal. At the end of the day, they were nothing. Hillary should have just released everything and had a whole floodgate wide open, and we could have looked through that information, and we would have been bored with it within 2 weeks, and it would have been out of the news cycle. It was that slow Chinese water torture drip that led to the death of the Hillary Clinton campaign. It's very possible that all this smoke surrounding the Trump administration, even if there is no fire, suffocates his administration to a point where it's completely ineffective. He's already sitting at 35% approval rating. It took George W. Bush 2 failed wars at the time the Afghanistan war was going absolutely horribly to get down to 35%. And he was at roughly 28% when he left office. We are 70 days in, and we have a president sitting at numbers that were attributed to a president who had a foreign policy that forever disrupted the world. And that, of course, is W. Bush. So it is very unique to have a president not get that 100-day bump. That's that overall support that we usually give a new incoming president, the benefit of the doubt.
And he's falling among every single group.
Well, the Republicans, he's still roughly 70%. I've seen numbers as far as 78% with Republican approval.
But again, it's a small trickle down. He's starting to get less and less. Like, I think he's under 50% with white men now.
And the thing is, what's happening now with foreign policy, these situations are so serious. What we saw in Syria, and I have to actually commend television news for showing the graphic images, because usually in this country we we whitewash war like nobody else. You go overseas and you watch the footage in Syria, or even what was happening in the Iraq War during the initial invasion. They show you everything. They show you limbs being blown off. They show you bones. They show you eyes out of sockets. They show you families grieving. In our country, it was a trumpet up to war, and they show the bright side, the good stories, and occasionally we'll see some fatalities. But for the most part, we see drone strike footage, and we see a big mushroom cloud. We see a large explosion. It goes back to the early 90s and the original invasion of the Gulf region in order to get the Iraqis out of Kuwait. All we saw were green streaks going through the air. We never saw where those streaks landed, and we never saw the destruction they created.
Well, we used to do that. We used to show the destruction. We used to show bodies back in Vietnam. And a lot of people say that's why public opinion of Vietnam turned tide as the war went on further and further, because people were sitting down every single night and they were seeing dead American soldiers.
Right.
And I think now this is a good idea for them to finally show this shit again. I wish they would have been doing this the last, 16 years?
Well, can you imagine, though? Because this is these chemical weapons that I believe Assad's regime has been using. Again, that is not confirmed, but that's just my personal belief. I believe it is the Assad regime. This is what they said Saddam had. These were the chemical weapons that Hans Blix was looking all over the damn world for, overturning every rock, every possible stone unturned to find weapons of mass destruction, aka chemical weapons, the similar weapons that were used by Saddam Hussein in the early 90s, which is why they thought they might still have them, which is a massive cornerstone of the rhetoric used to get us into Iraq in the first place.
All lies.
We're seeing it in Syria.
Yeah.
That is actually why we went into Iraq, because of the notion that they might have chemical weapons. And now we're seeing them actually used in Syria. And I do not believe that this president has the political willpower, nor does this country have the willpower to go in, have boots on the ground in a place like Syria. I believe the Russians are going to continue to dominate the arena, continue to dominate the whole theater in Syria. And for Donald Trump, who now apparently has a different, who he's changed his thoughts on Assad. Because you remember in 2016 when he was running, Trump praised Assad, like straight up praised him, and of course, and now of course you wonder if that empowered Assad to the degree where he felt carte blanche to be able to get away with this on a national stage, knowing that the U.S. wouldn't intervene. This is where Donald Trump comes in when it comes to demonizing Barack Obama. Of course, Barack Obama promised, he gave the red line to Assad regarding the use of chemical weapons. Chemical weapons were used. The red line was crossed. And this is the problem with giving red lines and giving determinate outcomes to situations that have not yet occurred. When they do occur, you better follow through with the threat. Otherwise, it is the definition of weakness or perceived weakness. Instead, what the Obama administration did, working with the Russians, was to get rid of chemical weapons in a as peaceful as possible way from Syria. And so, for all intents and purposes, they thought that they had rid the area of chemical weapons. But of course, as I talked about on that, as a Democratic strategist, as I talked about there is no border in Syria. The Middle East is in total shambles. It's not like what happened in Iran, where, they have a theocracy, they have a full functioning government, they have a full functioning society. It's entirely different. There is no border in Syria. So God knows where they were able to get these chemical weapons from. Maybe it's the North Koreans, who obviously have a bevy of chemical weapons, enough to go kill the brother of Kim Jong-un. Relatively strange use of one of the worst chemicals on the face of the planet. They just did it in broad daylight. And the fact that they even had that kind of chemical weapon is shocking and scary, and something that has to be watched out for. But these are all around the global world, and these are all sold on the black market and amongst countries on the down low. So who knows where Syria was able to get these chemical weapons? But for Donald Trump, in my opinion, to blame Obama the exact same way that Obama blamed Bush for too long, I think we can definitely look at the fact that Bush's foreign policy left us in such a strange way, in such a strange place internationally, that Barack Obama did have his back against the wall in a lot of ways. For Trump to blame Obama for what happened in Syria, I just got so disheartened by it, because it's another example of a president not taking responsibility, and this country deserves better than that. Yeah. We deserve a president. I don't care whose fault it is. Trump is constantly talking about how he inherited a mess. The world is always no president inherits a good situation, because that's why it's one of the most difficult jobs, if not the most difficult job in the world.
The closest we got is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton inherited an okay world.
Okay, and he left an okay world.
Yeah, he left an okay world.
Of course, he could have killed Osama, and then maybe we don't have 9/11. Who knows? But these are mistakes, and these are things in hindsight, and it is what it is. But I just thought that was such an unpresidential thing for Donald Trump to do. One of the many unpresidential things for him to do. We're looking at these children suffer like fish out of water, gasping for breath, and he just goes and blames it on his predecessor. Be the president.
If you want to talk about not taking responsibility, if you want to talk about dead children, drone civilian deaths under Trump in just 70 days have skyrocketed.
Well, Donald Trump on the campaign trail did promise to kill their families, and of course with Obama. I mean, these drone strikes are not specific. They're not scalpel. They're not Ben Carson doing brain surgery. They are scattershot, to say the least. And so Obama has his hands filthy when it comes to all of that stuff as well.
That is true. But Donald Trump is taking an even looser approach to it. He has removed some of the rules of engagement that Obama put on to try to, at the very least, minimize civilian deaths. He's removed those rules of engagement, and the drone deaths of civilians are much higher than they were under Obama. And they're only going to get higher. And this is this is not only inhuman, it is awful policy. For every single family member that you every single innocent family member that you kill, you are creating another terrorist. You're creating another person who hates not just America, but the rest of the world.
And as the Russians are seeing now as well with the suicide bomber that blew up, I believe it was a train station in Russia, countless people killed. These suicide bombers, when it comes to the philosophy and ideology of ISIS, it's a fluid philosophy. It knows no national borders, and that makes it extremely dangerous, specifically in the internet era. So I agree with you that we have to have much more precision. And Donald Trump, he does want to sort of take it away a little bit more from the drone program and go more into the direction of a traditional military. That's why the military spending is going through the roof right now. It reminds me of the Russians towards the latter days of the Soviet Union. Just overspending dramatically on the military. We have enough money at this point, although we are, $20 trillion in debt. So maybe we don't have enough money, actually. But that's his whole his MO is to rebuild the military in a tangible level because it's boys with their toys.
It's a terrible idea.
And it is what it is. So we also saw the developments recently now with the National Security Council with Steve Bannon is no longer on it. Supposedly no longer on it, and evidently he was only on it in order to watch National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Bannon was supposed to sort of, I guess, babysit him for all intents and purposes.
Keep an eye on him. Which, I mean, to me...
Is he going to whip down his pants? Does he do like the watch trick where it's like, look at my watch, and it turns out to be his penis wrapped around his wrist? I mean, what is this guy doing in there where they thought he needed a handler?
Why did they put him as National Security Advisor if they thought that he needed to have an eye kept on him? Like that,
exactly.
That, to me, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's them admitting that they knew that Michael Flynn might have been dirty.
And it was because Michael Flynn defended Donald Trump when no one else was defending Donald Trump. The entire campaign, Michael Flynn was supportive of Donald Trump, mainly because of his Muslim stance and his promise to ban Muslims, which was a horrible branding technique for the Trump administration. That's why the 6-country ban in the Middle East is so difficult to pass or convince people it's not a Muslim ban because, like we talked about, the president said it was. Flynn was there supporting him during all of those things. And I think it was a situation where Trump didn't have anybody else to turn to.
Well, that just tells you that Trump values loyalty over competence. He could have very well put someone in there that did not agree with him. He could have put his big boy pants on, grown the fuck up, and put someone in there that may have disagreed with him or had said that he didn't really like him in the past. But instead, he put someone in there that might have been dirty, that might have some stuff in his closet that might not have made him appropriate for the job, and put his other buddy Ben in there to keep an eye on him. It's just horrible, man. It's horrible management.
Well, you know who else had things in the closet? Eminem, and it turned out to be a great rap song where he was cleaning out the closet.
Yeah,
which you wouldn't think that would be a fun rap song because you think it would be more about cleaning, but it was more of a symbolic thing. He wasn't like Uncle Buck, where he's like, I got a bowling ball in here, I got some bowling pins in here, I got some peanut butter in here, I got some golf clubs in here. That's my cleaning out my closet. I got an old duffel bag in here. I got some Jose Bank jackets in here. Oh, look at my recorder where I record in my closet. That's what I use for that. So, and Donald Trump did come out and, he said in as strong of words as possible. I believe he called it an affront to humanity, what happened in Syria regarding the chemical attacks, of course. He hung out with the Jordanian president. So he has been aggressive in his rhetoric regarding, the disdain for the attacks that happened in Syria. He said his views on Assad have now changed. Who knows what that actually means? The Democrats are relatively silent on this entire issue. Do we just continue relying on the Russians to be our main military force over there? What are we really going to do in Syria? We overthrow Assad. Who takes over? I mean, these issues are so unbelievably complex. And hopefully the Trump administration will see what they can do going forward. I mean, I believe McMaster. He's very bright. He's a great military mind, and I'm sure they're going through a series of scenarios. And maybe this is an event, this catastrophic international event. Maybe this is what gets Donald Trump focused on the presidency, so he doesn't go and play golf for the 12th weekend out of his 14th or 15th weekend in the White House.
Nothing will ever get him focused. I'm 100% convinced by this. I mean, I don't think anything will ever get him focused. I mean, I don't mean to be fatalistic, and I know,
we'll see.
And I know there are people. I'm actually in pretty regular email correspondence with a very intelligent guy who also happens to be a Trump supporter. He's optimistic as fuck, but I cannot find any optimism in this presidency because he has just again and again proved otherwise. He just keeps fucking up.
I put it on Twitter and people got mad at me. Or one dude tweeted at me a bunch. I think it was Rusty. Hey, Rusty, how are you, buddy? He was, because I called it was a flippant. I thought it was a flippant response when the Syrian attacks first came to light. When we first saw the footage of this horrible destruction and death, for him to blame Obama first. Before, and then of course again he did come out and it's an affront to humanity and was a little bit more presidential, a little bit more mournful and understanding of the significance of the situation
because someone told him to be.
Well, he had to. Well, of course, I mean, that's not bad though. I mean, that's why you have advisors. These are just people. No person knows everything, and no one knows the perfect response.
Of course,
I just
not,
thought the first knee-jerk response though, which is a real indicator of who a person is, of character. The fact that he just blamed Obama immediately as opposed to recognizing the significance of the situation. And this would have been a great time. And, Obama was, didn't do a good enough job with healing the nation as well during a lot of the riots that were happening under, Barack Obama, a lot of the terror attacks that were happening. I think he was too professorial, and I don't think he was, he didn't project that warmth. Ronald Reagan, the policies were not good on many, many levels, but he did project warmth. And Bill Clinton, to some degree, projected a warmth. And Obama never really had that. But this was an opportunity for Trump to do that. Sit down with the nation, talk to us, instead of taking to Twitter and blaming Barack Obama.
Yeah, it is. It shows a massive amount of insecurity because, of course, his first thought is like, they're going to blame me. No, I better blame Obama. And, even Obama, yes, he was professorial and he was not very good at speaking to the American people, but at least he didn't just sit there and throw out red meat because that's what Trump was doing with that blame Obama thing. It's like, here's some red meat for people to chew on for a little while.
At the end of the day, I don't even disagree. I mean, you got to go back 2001, the Iraq War, the Afghanistan war. We can blame, we have three presidents we can blame for this now.
Yeah.
So yes, of course, Obama is complicit in the actions, to the actions of the Assad regime and what's happening in that region. He had 8 years of foreign policy that are certainly not to be forgotten about. Of course, the red line.
But it is not the president's idea to say. It's not the president's job to say that. It is the press's idea.
Sure,
the press's job to say that. The pundit's job to say that. It is not the president's job to say that. The election is fucking over.
It's over. He's still in election mode. He's already campaigning for 2020, which will be interesting. There are some rumors going around that current ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, wants to throw her name into the ring. But that would almost be impossible because she would have to start campaigning in 2018. And it's really difficult to primary a president within your own party for 2 years, actively sort of seeking their job. That's going to lead to some tensions, and I don't quite see how it's possible.
Yeah. Well, the reason why he's in campaign mode is because campaigning is the only thing he's good at.
It is.
It's the only thing he enjoys. It's
he
the
loves
only
it.
thing that makes him happy besides Fox News.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and he was great at it, and he is great at it. Talk about a candidate who did embrace the crowd. I mean, he did it absolutely amazingly. When I got to go on the television show as a Democratic strategist, I did say, and I do believe, if Hillary Clinton was president, I think we would have a stronger military intervention in Syria because I believe she would get Putin out of power, which is why the Russians most likely, I mean, basically we can say most, without a doubt, basically, but we'll just say most likely interfered in the 2016 election. I think that's pretty definitive at this point. There was interference.
I think it's pretty.
And it was because Putin. Yeah, because Putin was worried about getting Gaddafi'd.
Yeah.
And she basically promised that she would because she talked about how the elections were a fraud and how he doesn't have nearly the support that he says he does. And I think that Hillary would have had a more aggressive foothold in the Syrian region. I really do.
I think it's pettier than that. Like, I don't think that Putin was. Do you mean Putin was worried about getting Gaddafi, or Assad was?
No, Putin.
You think Putin?
And I think it would have gone down to Assad because right now Putin and Assad realized they had an ally in Donald Trump when Trump again was praising Assad and obviously Putin on the campaign trail in 2016.
I mean, it's also possible that it's much pettier than that because when Putin when there was an election a few years ago when there was a lot of ballot stuffing and things like that, Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, came out against Putin during this election and in Putin's view interfered with it, and it's very possible that Putin was just coming back at her.
Well, yeah, but pettiness in with stakes like these, this is how wars begin. Yeah, I mean, hell, John McCain just called Kim Jong-un a fat little kid, and in North Korea, thought of it, considered it a provocation of war.
It's a dumb idea. That was a really dumb shit thing to say.
It was funny, and then,
it was funny,
and
but
then people did say on Twitter, someone was like, "You shouldn't have called him a fat little kid." He's like, "What am I supposed to do? Call him a skinny little kid?" That was a good John McCain. That was a maverick move.
Yeah, that was a maverick move, but it was a really dumb shit thing to say. Things can be funny and dumb shit things to say at the same time.
Most things that are funny are kind of dumb shit things to say, actually. That's true. And of course, North Korea is now, they just tested a missile. They just put it into the Sea of Japan because, of course, the president is now meeting with the main man, the president of China. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, when the Japanese leader came over, North Korea also, they just act like children, and they know this is going to get them international press. The Japanese are going to cover their missile launch, and now, of course, the Chinese will be covering their launch as well. China provides 90% of all the goods in North Korea, and it is beginning to seem like the North Koreans, as we talked about, I'm not sure if we mentioned it on this show, but it seems to me like a cult on the way out. Mm-hmm. I think Kim Jong-un is like, where do we go from here? I think that's why he's eliminating his brother. I think the country is in such dire straits. They are extremely fatalistic, and I don't even know if the Chinese have the power that we hoped or assumed that they did for so many years over the North Koreans. Because again, the provocation with the missile launch is right on time with another meeting of a foreign leader from that region, and the North Koreans know exactly what they're doing. I think they're gearing up for the end. Yeah, it seems to me like, where did they go? This is the grandson of Kim Jong-un, and this is it. I don't know. I don't see Kim Jong-un. He's very young still. He's got many, many years in power left. At the end of the day, when your country is starving, the best thing for you to do is rally around the flag.
I mean, you're right. It does. I mean, it is a nation that is also a cult. That has been.
It is. Oh, it's very cultish,
that has actually been. I mean, this whole thing has been cultivated.
They got
for decades, through 3 generations.
They got L. Ron Hubbard's dream.
Yeah,
they have a nation.
Yeah,
yeah, and so I don't know. That's a whole nother situation.
Yeah, it's beyond dictatorship.
Oh my! It's a religion. Yeah. I mean, it's very with the Japanese, before World War II when they were dealing with that whole dynasty. That's exactly what's happening in real time. We get to see sort of a primitive way of governance in real time, and it always ends in destruction. They never end. It doesn't end well. Look, Lenin, the whole nine with the Russians. I mean, it just doesn't end well when you have to rely solely on your government and praise it like a deity, because they're just people, not gods. And people always make mistakes, just naturally. So the international affairs right now, with what's happening with the North Koreans, what's happening in Syria, this is really overwhelming stuff. And I just hope, I think McMaster is good. I think there are some people that can handle what's happening right now. And then you cloud all of that. But so hopefully they can, figure out a rational strategy for Syria. Boots on the ground. What does it do? Get Assad out of office. Who's replacing him? A lot of times we see, these situations, and naturally, just being Americans, we see protest as good for progressive reasons, for in order to create a more humane world, based on equality. But a lot of times in the Middle East specifically, the protesters are more radical than the people they're trying to dispose of. And so I don't know who fills the vacuum, the power vacuum in Syria, which is why Assad has been able to weather every single storm. And these have been very stormy, Twister-esque conditions. I mean, it's been tumultuous to say the least, but the only reason he's able to stay in power is because the Americans and the Russians are like, who else?
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing with that. So that's the sort of, and then all of that being clouded with the Russian scandal. I mean, it's been a strange, difficult 70 days, and I think it's starting to set in, if it hasn't already, with the Trump administration, that these next 4 years are going to be extremely significant and important, because everyone right now is acting up.
Yep.
And this is where America, we don't need strong rhetoric, we actually need strong actions. And
strong leadership.
Strong leadership. And so we'll see if they're going to be able to do it. And that's just a time will tell, because he hasn't released any foreign policy yet, because Donald Trump consistently, and I understand to some degree what he's saying, but I just don't have the confidence that he actually understands enough to really back up the claims that he's not saying what we want to do militarily in the Middle East, because he doesn't want to reveal his hand. He's been saying that on the campaign trail. He's like, we used to tell people the day, the hour we're going to attack, all that kind of stuff. And I do understand you don't want a Geraldo Rivera moment where you reveal secret information and then the terrorists are able to, or the enemy is able to use it against us. But I just don't trust him that he has in the back of his mind an actual policy that he's concealing, because quite frankly, as we've learned from Donald Trump, if he knows something, he's going to Twitter with it.
Yeah. We gave the job of president to an amateur at the worst possible time. At a crossroads, not only just for America, but for the world, we gave the job to an amateur to see what happens.
What happens. And again, I mean, there's a lot of people, it was just, I don't want to get in. We're not renegotiating. We're not going to rehash the whole 2016 election, for crying out loud.
We're not going to rehash the election.
There's a lot of events that brought us here, and this is the candidate. This is the president America deserves right now, and both sides are to blame for this.
Yeah,
I firmly believe that.
I don't think America ever deserves this.
And talking about,
we do not, are the good people of this country and the ideals that we uphold most of the time, we never deserved a person like Donald Trump.
We got to get different people in political office, and we have to have many, many more people on that stage running for the most significant office in the world, which is the United States presidency. But going back to the bickering and the bipartisanship that is just permeating through Washington because of gerrymandering, because of redistricting, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to solve it all.
Oh, yeah.
He's promised. I hope he does.
You've already solved it. The Bigfoot Pizza Ben Kissel redistricting plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a genius idea. We'll see if it is. Maybe this Brooklyn Borough president will be able to do it. What's happening right now with Gorsuch, the Democrats are promising no matter what, there's a few Democrats that are supporting Gorsuch. Of course, he's the Supreme Court nominee that Donald Trump has put up. Neil Gorsuch, he's more conservative than Scalia, but for all intents and purposes, a rational judge with conservative leaning. So I understand having issues with him from an ideological perspective, but as far as being a judge, he's a judge.
Yeah.
And I believe Merrick Garland should have went through, but the Republicans were such obstructionists when it comes to Merrick Garland. The Democrats are getting their revenge, and now it's possible that the Republicans pull the nuclear option, which I hate even using that term for this, which basically will negate the fact that you need 60 votes, bring it down to 51 votes, and Gorsuch would be able to be confirmed as Supreme Court justice that way.
So in other words, it means that whoever whoever is in power at the time will automatically get in their Supreme Court nominee.
The 60 vote thing, it's just a precedent. It's
Yeah.
not like a law. That's why Congress is so difficult to follow.
Well, they love their rules.
They just have precedent, though. It's not
Yeah.
even like there's nothing in the Constitution about it.
Right.
It is just long-standing tradition, and that's sort of been the glue that has binded a lot of the United States Congress, and of course the Supreme Court relies solely on precedent. Or hopefully does. If that does happen, which it very well could, I think it'll be a black mark on the appointment and on Neil Gorsuch as a Supreme Court justice. But everything is so hyper-partisan right now, and the Democrats now actively being the opposition party and being the obstructionist party are taking a page out of the Republicans' playbook. Of course, the Republicans are now complaining about it, and I wish the Democrats had a little bit more of a moral high ground, but I understand. These people are it's a rock and a hard place, except for people like Joe Manchin, who is from a state that Donald Trump won. You have a few Democrats in there from states that Donald Trump won. There's another one from, I believe it was South Dakota, where it's not going to be political suicide if they support Gorsuch. But now, because of the precedent set by Republicans regarding their absolute pathetic non-vote on Merrick Garland, the Democrats are just taking a page out of their book, and we're right back to where we are. We're right back to where we were with Merrick Garland, but now the name has changed. It's Neil Gorsuch, and the American people at the end of the day, just the everyday American person who doesn't care about partisan politics, is once again, they have their hands up in the air looking at Washington, and that's why Congress now sits at about an 11% approval rating, but still 98% of people who go up for re-election win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane the way the system has been rigged. And Republicans, are very good. Look at North Carolina, very good at gerrymandering, redistricting, putting it into an algorithm, the people they know for a fact after, getting a bunch of data study. And the Democrats do the same thing, but the Republicans are better at it, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And they know how to they know how to redistrict to a point where they're guaranteed victories. And the Democrats as well. That's why you have 98% retainment into the House and into the Senate, regardless of the fact they sit nationally at around 11% approval.
Yep,
it's totally broken. That's just not the. I mean, if you would tell somebody obviously it's a republic, but if you would tell someone elected officials sit at 11%, they would be like, so they're all gone the next year, right? It's like, nope, 98% stay. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
but it's all on purpose. It is all on purpose. None of that stuff is the fault of the American people because they never moved. They didn't move their house into another district.
No,
some random imaginary line just changed.
We didn't vote for this. We didn't sign off on this. We didn't say yes to this.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's basically where we are right now.
Yeah.
It's good times. Democratic strategist Ben Kissel, which is very fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for your support. I think we got to basically everything. Susan Rice, we'll figure that out. We'll see if more information comes to light.
Justice Susan Rice, just like with the Republicans on the Russian side, smoke, no fire.
Smoke, no fire, but again, smoke suffocates, and we'll see if the Trump administration is going to be able to withstand this for 4 frickin' years. For 70 days. Basically 70 days. I mean, it's pretty remarkable right now. Gorsuch, I do believe he's going to end up passing. I think they might have to do the option where it's just going to be 51 votes. As far as Syria, I believe it's going to be a little bit more of the same with the Russians taking the lead there. Again, I believe they want to, get those, kind of get that coalition, get the, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, get those nations kind of under control and have a little bit more of power there. And, the big winner on the international stage is still Vladimir Putin, which is absolutely pathetic.
Yeah.
And it sucks to say this is, and I wish that wasn't the case, but I don't really see how it isn't at this point. Although Nikki Haley has been, I got to say, she's been doing a great job. If you watch her speak in front of the UN, she's doing a wonderful job, and she is a bright spot for the Republican Party. And the Democratic Party, they've got to figure out how to be the party of opposition, but also a party of ideas and a party that can mobilize a significant group of people for 2018. Because as we're seeing, as we're seeing right now, it doesn't matter if the Democrats, only have 48 or a significantly less number in Congress. The Republicans will dismantle themselves, as we're seeing with the fractures between the Freedom Caucus, your establishment Republicans, and then your bizarre Steve King's alt-right Republicans. It's sort of 3 different factions going against each other. So it's almost You almost don't need the Democrats if you don't like the Republican Party. Don't stress it, because they are taking care of themselves when it comes to dismantling their power structure.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening. The show is absolutely crushing it, by the way. So we really appreciate you.
Thank y'all so much.
And so go on iTunes and rate and review. Oh, that would be amazing.
Yes.
And then I'm popping up on doing a bunch of different stuff. So I'll put that out on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Kissel. Find Marcus Parks on Twitter at Marcus Parks. And let's see, we're nominated for a Webby for Last Podcast on the Left.
Yeah, be sure to go to webbyawards.com and vote for Last Podcast. Get that People's Choice Awards. Thank you so much for getting us to this point, everybody. This is all due to you.
It's all due to you. Thank you so much. And go and get a T-shirt also. There's the Able Against Top Hat shirt and the Ben Kissel for President shirt and the Don't Come At Me with that shirt.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Last Podcast shirts and the Jackie shirt and all that kind of stuff.
CaveComedyRadioMerch.com.
Yes. All right, everyone. I'm going to say hail yourselves because I love you so much.
No.
I'm bringing it to this show.
I'm gonna.
If I ever got to be Brooklyn Borough President, by the way, you know that sign that goes over the Pulaski? Right now it says, "What a great place to live." Hail yourselves. That's what it would say. And that would be amazing. And we're going to have a lot more to talk about with that. May 1st, I think, will be our big launch date, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and it'll be hopefully encourage people to get active. That's the whole point, is to encourage people to get out there and participate, because we have the right to do it, and a lot of people died for the right for us to do it. And so we got to respect that. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to cavecomedyradio.com.